one of the top front office executives in her time in the NFL. Now with CBS Sports, joining me here, Amy Trask. How are you, Amy?
I'm well, and I thank you for having me. I let the cat out of the bag this morning on Twitter, Rich. I've been such a fan of yours for so long. I won't say how long. So thanks for having me.
Well, I got to tell you, though, Amy, you and I first met many NFL league meetings ago, and when you and Al Davis walked in the room, there was a certain level of attention paid that we had no idea what was going to come our way. And I was one of the first NFL Network employees to go up to you and just chat with you. And it was always fun to watch you and Al maneuver in an NFL meeting. I'll tell you that.
You just described that very, very gracefully and gently. Thank you. We did make a bit of a ruckus.
Before Al abstained on everything. Before he pretty much, did he ever vote on anything? He always abstained, Amy. That always happened.
You know what? That is one of my proudest accomplishments. I got him to stop abstaining. And the way I got him to stop abstaining was when they asked for the vote, I simply voted before he could abstain.
Did you really
so
do
they would go around the room, and I would either say yes or no, and he would start to abstain. And I discussed that with him a lot. There were times for legal reasons. We were advised by counsel we had to abstain. But he took it to an art form, and it drove me nuts, and I proudly, someday that will be my epitaph. I got us to stop abstaining.
I remember that. I always remember also, and I don't know if it's still this way because it's been a while since I've been to a league meeting, that the tables, the way it was set, it was just like a big E, where like the legs of the E would come out from the long, I guess, stripe that connects the legs of the E, where all the executives and the commissioner would sit on that spot, and the NFL owners would sit on the legs, and Al would always sit at the end of the bottom of the E in that seat every single time, and he would just sit there and then never raise his hand when it came time to voting.
And you know what, Rich? Two things quickly in that regard. Number one, it always amazed me. It was like something out of a junior high school lunchroom because everybody had to take the same seats every time. I always thought it would be a great idea if the rule was you had to sit with different people every meeting. I thought it would have just generated more conversation.
Right.
And I will tell you one last thing about the abstention. When I finally got him to stop abstaining, a number of team owners and executives said to me, way to go, way to go. And then we started voting no on everything. And I said, bet you wish we were still abstaining.
Amy Trask here on the Rich Eisen Show, now CBS sports football analyst and kind guest here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's get to it. Your first reaction hearing about the NFL announcing they were holding a Kaepernick workout in Atlanta this Saturday was what, Amy?
Oh, it was a mixed reaction. Hopeful, of course, that it was a sincere, well-intended effort on the league's part. Hopeful that it will be received as such. Very, very puzzled as to why it would be on such short notice. In other words, I don't know whether it was for well-intended reasons or whether it was for PR reasons. But either way, to do it on 3 days' notice puzzled me. You know, we're only finding out now who's going to be in charge of the play selection and getting receivers there, and how do you get good quality receivers there on 3 days' notice. The logistics are really puzzling to me. If you're going to do something like this, and if we want to assume that it is for well-intended reasons, not simply PR, again, noting that I don't know the reason, why would you only do 3 days' notice? That made no sense to me.
Well, especially if it is only for PR, right? Then what that makes zero sense. And then obviously if it's not for PR and we have to, let's assume that's what it is, because why else would you have this? It just came out of the blue. I mean, so the way it's being run doesn't make much sense on either level, Amy. I'm wondering what you've been able to suss out or what you can guess based on your vast history or knowledge of the way the league operates.
Well, you make a great point, of course, which is that if this was for PR, you're not getting a good grade, because if the goal of this was to quiet the story down, put an end to the story, it's had the reverse effect. Now there's a whole new storyline as to why are you doing it in this manner. there's a famous ism, if you will, Hanlon's razor, suggests that when you can assume that something is done for malicious or mendacious reasons, or you can assume there's simply some incompetence involved, it generally is the latter. In other words, Hanlon's razor tells us don't assume the worst, don't assume things are done for malicious reasons, assume they're simply done poorly. And that also is a discussion I had for 30 years with Al, when anytime the league would do anything, he would immediately go DEFCON 5, and it was just, what's that expression from the mob movies, to the mattresses. I actually learned that from, You've Got Mail, to the mattresses. Well, that's what he would want to do. And I would say to him, whoa. Let's not assume that this is being done for malicious reasons. Let's just assume it's being poorly done. And I don't know which is the case in this, Rich, but I do know that you're absolutely right. If the goal was to quiet things down, it's had the reverse effect.
Well, let's take it from the more, I guess, glass half full viewpoint, Amy Trask, here on the Rich Eisen Show, and that this
Which I like to do.
Well, sure, because the benefit of this can be that executives do, or scouts do, see Kaepernick in person, and the interview process can somehow bridge whatever divide an owner that thinks, you know what, we can use someone of his capabilities, but I'm concerned about how he would affect the locker room and my community based on the stances or sitting or kneeling he would take. That bridge gets divided through the interview process that's part of Saturday. Let's just
one can hope.
Okay, so let's take that. Now, the issue, though, of scrambling the Jets to get somebody to this event, of note that you are indicating we're taking this seriously. How would you, as a front office executive, let's just say you and have an owner and you are of the mindset of like, I want to handle this, I want to see this in person, or I want to have somebody of note. What logistical issues are there to be told about it just a couple of days in advance in a week 11 of an NFL season?
Well, you hit the proverbial nail on the head, Rich. It's not whether or not you can get someone there. Absolutely, positively. Any team that wishes to have someone in Atlanta on Saturday can do that. It's just not that hard. The question is, who can you get to Atlanta? Because unless you're on a bye week, and if you're on a bye, it may be trouble scrambling to get people who are taking a couple of days off and maybe somewhere unreachable, which does happen. Rarely, but occasionally. It's just, if you're not on a bye, you're not going to get a head coach. You're probably not going to get a GM. You may not, and again, if you're proximate to Atlanta, if you're playing close by, if you're an hour flight away, if you're assigned to scout a game that's an hour flight away, that's one thing. But if you're across the country or you're a good distance away and your scouts are at games and you're getting ready to go on a road trip or you've got a home game, you're not going to get a very, very senior person. But can you get someone? Absolutely, positively, yes.
And then what happens? What happens with the information? Let's just say your team is playing a Week 11 not proximate to Atlanta, and your HC, or you're on a bye week, and the HC or the general manager have already made plans to be in Bermuda because they knew their bye week would be right here, and it's a 10-week slog to get to that spot. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. What do you do with the information? How do you take it in and actually use it to your benefit to maybe hire Colin Kaepernick?
Well, that's going to be team specific, and every team does this differently. And that's not an effort on my part to equivocate or, to use a football term, to punt. But if an organization thinks highly of those that it deploys to evaluate situations, and if an organization takes input from those it sends around the country to gather information, well, then you're going to listen. If an organization sends a scout or someone from the personnel department, even if that person is junior level, if that person comes back and says, okay, I asked all the questions that we discussed ahead of time that you wanted me to ask, here's the answers I got, here's the impression I had, different team ownership and different team executives are going to rely upon its junior staff differently than others. One thing teams should do if sending someone who's junior on staff, arm them with all the data you want them to collect. This is what we want you to ask Colin. This is what we want you to observe. And then when that person comes back, listen to what he or she has to say.
What about you, Amy? If from somebody from your perspective as a front office executive, let's just say you don't have a need for Colin Kaepernick at quarterback, but support his desire to play in the NFL and the fact that he should have a spot here. Would you attend something like this just for that reason alone?
I would attend for any number of reasons. That would be one of them. But no one knows when one might have a need for a quarterback. There are a lot of teams. I don't think the Steelers knew going into the game in which Ben Roethlisberger was injured that they would be starting Mason Rudolph for the rest of the season, and we could go on and on and on through the list. There are teams which need quarterbacks. Every single team is one snap away from needing a quarterback. So, yes, I would send someone for the reason you identified, but I would also send someone for football reasons.
And then what goes on in a front office where somebody might sit around and say, you know what, this is just a problem with our fan base, or I'm afraid of a problem of our fan base. Is there some sort of work that can be done locally, just polling, something along those lines, to try and get through all that?
This is what I suggested at the outset of this issue. We live in a time right now where everybody is treating things as binary, and it's yes or it's no, or it's up or it's down, when things need not be binary. What I would do is I would hold a proverbial town hall. And I would do it in the largest place possible. I would do it in a theater, or I would do it in a concert venue, or I would do it in a stadium. And I would invite ticket holders and fans, and I would say, let's have a discussion about this. And let's use this as a moment in society to learn how to exchange thoughts in a reasoned and reasonable manner. And you know what? We are not all going to agree about this, and that's okay. But we have to learn as a society how to disagree agreeably. So I would turn what many teams are looking at as a negative into a positive, which is, how do I use this moment in time to embrace our entire fan base and say, let's lead the way in showing people how to disagree agreeably. I would also bring in members of armed forces, both people who have served, people who are serving, so many of whom have articulated, stop throwing out that this is disrespectful to the flag or the troops, because I enlisted to defend the right of others to say and to do that with which I disagree. That's one of our greatest freedoms. So I would use this moment in time to try to change the way we address disagreement.
Amy Trask here on the Rich Eisen Show. Before I let you go, 17-game season being thrown out there is quote-unquote increasingly likely. Richard Sherman, who is in on a lot of these negotiations representing players with the Players Association, called that report tactics from the league using their media connections to push a false story. We aren't even close to a deal. They are literally pushing out their proposal as something we agree with, which is ridiculous. He said that in response to Eric Weddle, who on Twitter from the Rams said, if we agreed a 17-game schedule, it would be a travesty. Not sure why it's even on the table. What's your assessment of all of this, Amy?
Well, we're in the midst of negotiations, and different parties handle negotiations differently. And I think we need to assume that everything that everyone involved says is in some regards part of that negotiation. I'm intrigued with the 17-game schedule, but only with these caveats. One, it would have to come with a reduction in the preseason. And two, it would have to come with a significant, not a man or two, but a significant increase in roster size. And that's for health and safety reasons, among other things. So if you want to talk to me, a player rep, about increasing the number of games, I want to increase the roster by a significant amount. I want to reduce preseason games. And oh, by the way, if we're going to increase the roster, I want a little more money to take care of those positions.
Amy, you are the best. I follow you on Twitter at Amy Trask. I love your attitude on that website, and obviously your work with CBS Sports is must-see, and always enjoy our chats immensely, but you knew that.
And I always enjoy joining you. I am a big fan of yours.
Right back at you, Amy Trask. It's called Mutual Admiration. At Amy Trask on Twitter. She is a must follow.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download The Rich Eisen Show app.